The garage lights had dimmed as the last customer left, but Nicholas, my supposedly straight mechanic, didn't head out like usual. Instead, he locked the door from the inside and turned to me with eyes full of something I couldn't name, saying words that would leave me confused for months to come. "Jonathan, I can't keep pretending this is just about the cars anymore," he said, his voice low and steady like the rumble of an engine idling in the Colorado dusk. I stood there in my small auto shop on the edge of Boulder, tools still scattered across the workbench, the smell of oil and rubber thick in the air. My heart hammered against my ribs. Nicholas had worked for me for almost a year now, 32 years old, divorced with a kid back in Denver, always cracking jokes about weekend football and his ex-wife's cooking. He looked every bit the straight guy from a small-town American dream, broad shoulders under grease-stained coveralls, calloused hands that fixed anything with quiet confidence. I laughed it off at first, or tried to. "What are you talking about, man? It's late. Go home." But he didn't move. The rain had started outside, tapping against the metal roof like 1,000 questions I didn't want to answer. He stepped closer, wiping his hands on a rag, and for the first time I noticed the way his jaw tightened, the hesitation in his stance. "Look, boss, I stayed tonight because I had to. Something's been eating at me since that big transmission job last month. Remember how we worked side by side till midnight? I kept thinking about how easy it felt. Too easy. And not in a work way." His words hung there, heavy as the humid air after a thunderstorm. I backed up against the tool chest, my mind racing through every interaction we'd had, every laugh, every shared coffee break. Was this a joke? Some prank from the guys? But Nicholas wasn't smiling. His blue eyes, usually so steady, held a storm I recognized deep down in a place I'd buried since college. That night stretched on. We sat on the old couch in the break room, the one with the faded Broncos logo, drinking lukewarm coffee from the machine that always tasted like regret. He told me about his marriage falling apart not because of another woman, but because he couldn't stop thinking about the way men carried themselves, the quiet strength that pulled at him in ways he never admitted. "I thought it was just stress," he said, staring at the floor. "But seeing you every day, Jonathan, handling the business, being kind to customers even when they're yelling about bills, it hit different." I listened, my own chest tightening with memories of my conservative family back in Nebraska, the sermons about what a real man should be, the dates I'd forced myself on just to fit in. By the time the rain stopped, we hadn't fixed any cars, but something between us had cracked open. I drove home that night in silence, the streetlights blurring through the windshield, wondering if I'd just imagined the way his hand brushed mine when he handed me the keys. The next morning at the shop felt normal on the surface. Customers rolled in, engines roared to life, and Nicholas was back to his usual self, sleeves rolled up, whistling along to the country station. But I caught him glancing my way more than once, quick looks that lingered a second too long. At lunch, we ate sandwiches on the tailgate of my truck parked out back, the Rocky Mountains jagged against the blue sky. "You okay after last night?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. He nodded, but his knee bounced under the tailgate. "Yeah, just thinking. Didn't mean to dump all that on you." I wanted to say it was fine, that I understood more than he knew, but the words stuck. Instead, I changed the subject to the next big repair job, a classic Mustang that needed a full rebuild. Work kept us busy, safe. Yet every bolt we tightened together felt charged now, every shared glance a question mark. By closing time that week, the confusion had settled in like fog rolling off the foothills. I replayed his confession on loop while driving home to my quiet apartment, the one with the single bed and the photos of my niece and nephew I hadn't visited in months. My sister called that evening, her voice bright over the speakerphone. "When are you coming home for Thanksgiving, John? Mom keeps asking if you're seeing anyone." I lied smoothly the way I always did. "Working on it." Hanging up, I stared at my reflection in the dark window, 30 years old and still hiding. Nicholas's words echoed. "I can't keep pretending." Neither could I, but admitting that felt like stepping off a cliff into the unknown air of small-town America. where everyone knew your business and judgment came faster than a bad piston knock. Weeks blurred into a rhythm I both craved and feared. Nicholas started staying late more often, not every night but enough that it became our thing. We'd finish the day's jobs, lock up, and talk. Not about cars this time, but real things. He told me about his son, 8 years old and obsessed with soccer, how the divorce had gutted him not because he missed his ex but because he felt like a fraud the whole time. I loved her, Jonathan, but it was never the way it was supposed to be, he said one evening as we sat on the curb outside the shop, the neon sign buzzing above us. The air smelled of pine from the nearby trails, crisp with the first hints of fall. I shared pieces of my own story, the college boyfriend I'd left behind when my parents found out, the years of forcing myself into the straight mold because it was easier than the stairs. Our friendship deepened in those quiet hours. Nicholas brought coffee from the place down the street, the one with the good Ethiopian blend, and we'd laugh about customer horror stories while the shop radio played low. But the laughter always carried an edge now, a current underneath that made my pulse quicken. One Thursday, after a long day replacing brakes on a fleet of delivery vans, he asked me to help him move some heavy shelving in the back storage room. The space was tight, dust motes dancing in the single bulb's glow. Our arms brushed as we lifted, and for a split second neither of us pulled away. His breath hitched. "Sorry," he muttered, but his eyes said otherwise. I stepped back, heart racing, mumbling something about needing to check inventory. That weekend I drove up to the mountains alone, hiking a trail near Netherland to clear my head. The aspen leaves had turned gold, fluttering like warnings. My phone buzzed with a text from Nicholas. "Kids' soccer game tomorrow. You want to come watch? No pressure." I stared at the screen for 10 minutes before replying yes. Sitting on the bleachers beside him the next day, surrounded by other parents in Broncos jerseys, felt surreal. His son scored a goal, and Nicholas hooped, clapping me on the shoulder like anybody would. But later, walking back to the parking lot, he said quietly, "Thanks for coming. Means more than you know." The simple words landed heavy. Back at the shop Monday, the air between us had shifted again, thicker with unspoken possibility. Misunderstandings crept in soon after. One of the part-time guys, Mike, noticed us leaving together one night and joked in the break room the next morning. "You two getting cozy or what? Nicholas finally trading in the ladies." Nicholas laughed it off, but I saw the tension in his shoulders. Later he pulled me aside by the tool chest. "Don't let it get to you. People talk." But it did get to me. That night I lay awake wondering if this was how it started. The slow unraveling of secrets in a town where everyone knew your truck by sight. Nicholas texted me at midnight, "Can't sleep. You?" I didn't reply right away. The confusion was mine now too, swirling with the fear of what admitting any of this would cost us both. Jobs, friends, the fragile peace we'd built. The holidays arrived like a slow-moving storm. Thanksgiving at my parents' house in Nebraska was the usual minefield of questions. "Still single, John?" my dad asked over turkey, his eyes narrowing the way they had since I was 20. I nodded, mouth full, avoiding the topic. Nicholas texted me pictures of his son's school play, captioned, "Wish you could have seen this." The distance felt wrong. When I got back to Boulder, the shop was decorated with cheap lights Nicholas had strung up himself. "Figured we'd make it festive," he said, handing me a paper cup of mulled cider from the market. We worked through the busy season side by side, fixing holiday travelers' cars, but every shared moment carried weight. One snowy evening in December, after closing early because of a blizzard warning, Nicholas stayed again. We sat in the break room with the heater humming, watching the flakes pile up outside the window. I told my ex about some of it, he confessed, staring into his coffee. Not everything, but enough. She wasn't surprised. Said she always wondered. His vulnerability hit me hard. I reached across the table without thinking, covering his hand for a second. He didn't pull away. Instead, he turned his palm up, fingers brushing mine in a way that sent electricity straight through me. "Jonathan," he whispered, What if this isn't just confusion? The question hung there, fragile as the snow. I wanted to say yes, to lean in, but the old fears clamped down. I don't know if I can do this, I admitted. Not here. Not with everything. Christmas came and went in a haze of family obligations and shop parties. Nicholas brought his son to the employee potluck, and watching them together made something ache in my chest. The boy looked up at me with the same blue eyes and asked if I was his dad's best friend. I smiled and said yes, but inside the label felt too small and too big at once. New Year's Eve we closed the shop at 5 and drove to a quiet overlook above town. Fireworks popped in the distance over Boulder. Nicholas turned to me in the truck cab, breath fogging the glass. I think I'm falling for you, Jonathan. Not as a friend. For real. The confession shattered the last of my careful walls. We didn't kiss that night, but the way he looked at me said everything. Driving home alone afterward, the roads slick with ice, I realized the confusion had turned into something deeper, something terrifying and beautiful. Spring brought longer days and harder choices. The shop thrived, but rumors started circulating around town like exhaust fumes. Mike had seen us at the Overlook that night and mentioned it casually at the local bar. By March, customers were giving me sideways looks. One regular, an older guy from the hardware store, pulled me aside after an oil change. You and Nick seem real tight. Everything okay? The question wasn't innocent. Nicholas noticed the shift too. Ignore them, he said one afternoon while we rotated tires, but his jaw was set tight. His ex called him more often, worried about how it would affect their son if word spread at school. I met his family for the first time at a little league game in April. His parents drove down from Denver, polite but distant when Nicholas introduced me as my boss and good friend. The word friend landed like a wrench on concrete. Later, alone in the shop, he slammed a drawer harder than necessary. They don't get it. Never will. We argued then, the first real one, voices rising over the hum of the air compressor. Maybe they're right, I snapped. Maybe this is too much. He stared at me, hurt flashing across his face. You don't mean that, but part of me did. The pressure from my own family had intensified. My sister sent articles about traditional values, and my dad left voicemails about coming home for good. The misunderstandings piled up, each one chipping away at the fragile thing we'd built. Yet in the quiet moments, we found each other. Late nights turned into drives up the canyon, talking about dreams beyond the shop. Nicholas wanted to open his own garage someday, maybe in a bigger city where no one cared. I admitted I dreamed of traveling, of not hiding anymore. Those conversations healed what the world tried to break. But society pushed back harder. A local newspaper ran a story about changing values in Boulder, and suddenly our small business felt exposed. Nicholas sacrificed weekends with his son to stay late and prove nothing was wrong, and I traded family visits for extra shifts just to avoid questions. The emotional toll mounted, each decision carrying the weight of who we might lose. Summer brought the breaking point. A big client pulled his fleet account after hearing the rumors, citing family values. The loss hit the shop hard. Nicholas blamed himself, working longer hours to make up the difference, his shoulders slumping under the strain. One humid July night, after another 14-hour day, he broke down in the storage room. I don't know if I can keep doing this to you, Jonathan. Maybe I should quit. Go back to pretending. His words cut deeper than any tool ever could. I pulled him into a hug, the first real one, grease and sweat mixing with the salt of his tears. Don't you dare, I whispered. But doubt had rooted deep in both of us. The crisis peaked when my parents showed up unannounced for a surprise visit. They walked into the shop during a slow afternoon, catching Nicholas and me sharing a quiet moment by the coffee machine. My dad's face hardened instantly. Later, back at my apartment, the confrontation exploded. This isn't you, son. That man is confusing you. I defended us, voice shaking, but the damage was done. Nicholas waited outside in his truck, engine running, ready to leave if I asked. When I finally came out, He looked at me with eyes full of sacrifice. If this is too much, I'll walk away. For you. The offer broke something in me. I realized then how much we'd both given up already, how love between two men in America still demanded payment in pieces of ourselves. That night we drove out to the plains beyond town, sitting on the hood of the truck under a sky full of stars. No more hiding, we decided. But the road ahead felt endless, paved with more misunderstandings and family silences. Nicholas's son started asking questions too, innocent ones that carried the weight of the world. The internal storm raged, forcing us to face every fear we'd buried. Yet in the quiet admission that we couldn't turn back, something shifted. The confusion had become clarity, painful and raw, but ours. Fall returned, painting the foothills in reds and golds, and with it came the slow thaw. We didn't lose the shop after all. New customers came, drawn by word of honest work and fair prices. Nicholas's family started asking careful questions, not accepting yet but listening. My parents called less, but when they did, the anger had softened into something closer to worry. Small steps, but steps. We took a weekend trip to Rocky Mountain National Park. Just the two of us, hiking trails where no one knew our names. Under the pines, Nicholas took my hand without hesitation. "I'm done pretending," he said simply. The words felt like sunrise after a long night. The growth wasn't dramatic. It was in the everyday choices. Introducing each other as partners at the shop Christmas party, posting a simple photo on social media that drew supportive comments from unexpected places, showing up for his son's soccer games as a team. Misunderstandings still happened. Old habits died hard, but we faced them together. Sacrifices remained. Family ties strained but not severed. Society watching with mixed eyes. Yet the emotional journey had forged us stronger. I saw it in the way Nicholas smiled now, lighter, and in my own reflection, no longer hiding. One crisp October evening, closing the shop together, he turned to me with that same steady gaze from a year ago. Best decision I ever made. Staying late that night. I pulled him close, the world outside fading for a moment. Love hadn't fixed everything, but it had given us the courage to keep choosing each other. As the lights dimmed and the door locked behind us, I knew we'd made it through the storm. Is true love worth risking your entire world for? True or false?